Did you know that chronic clutter can be shockingly connected to narcissistic abuse? Have you ever felt overwhelmed by piles of stuff, unable to part with things, or just too emotionally drained to declutter? If yes, you're not alone. It might sound strange at first, but the emotional toll of being in a relationship with a narcissist doesn't just affect your heart and mind. It can spill over into your physical space too. Narcissistic abuse often creates a kind of emotional chaos that makes it hard to keep things in order. Today, we'll dive into how narcissistic abuse and chronic clutter are more intertwined than you might think, and how understanding this connection could be a step toward healing. Are you ready for number 1? Overwhelm from triggers. Sorting through your stuff can be a lot more than just tidying up. It can stir up a whole emotional storm. When you start going through old items, memories of the abuse might hit you unexpectedly, leaving you feeling overwhelmed and drained. Even something as simple as an old photo or a piece of clothing could bring back painful moments or remind you of the emotional chaos you've been through. Therapist Dr. Laura Brown, in her book The Trauma Toolkit, explains, trauma is often stored in our physical surroundings. Sorting through things can trigger emotional reactions that feel too intense to handle. That's why decluttering can feel like a never-ending uphill battle when you're dealing with the aftermath of narcissistic abuse. The key is to be gentle with yourself. It's okay to take breaks and process the emotions as they come. Decluttering doesn't have to happen all at once. Small steps are perfectly fine. Life coach Marie Forleo suggests, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. You can start with a small, manageable area and focus on the positive impact of clearing that space, even if it takes time. It's not about getting everything done in one go. It's about creating a safe space where you can begin healing. You have the right to feel your emotions and work at your own pace. And each little step is a victory in reclaiming your life from the emotional overwhelm the narcissist left behind. Let's talk about number 2. Overcompensation with material possessions. When someone treats you like you don't matter, it leaves a big emotional void. After enduring narcissistic abuse, you might try to fill that emptiness with stuff, buying things, keeping items, and surrounding yourself with possessions. It's not because you're materialistic. It's because you're trying to soothe a part of yourself that's been neglected for so long. As author and therapist Dr. Gabor Mate explains in The Realm of Hungry Ghosts, when emotional needs go unmet, we often turn to external sources to compensate. Those possessions might feel like a way to regain comfort or control, even if they're just piling up around you. The problem is, no amount of stuff can truly fill that void. Instead of healing the pain, the clutter can make you feel even more overwhelmed. But don't beat yourself up about it. It's a natural response to trauma. The key is to shift your focus from external things to internal healing. As life coach Cheryl Richardson says in The Art of Extreme Self-Care, true nourishment comes from tending to your emotional and spiritual well-being. Start by asking yourself, what do I really need right now? Maybe it's self-compassion, a good cry, or reaching out to someone who understands. Letting go of clutter isn't just about clearing space in your home. It's about making room for the things that truly nurture your heart. Let's move on to number 3. Perfectionism, paralysis. Perfectionism can feel like a double-edged sword. On one side, you want everything to be just right. On the other side, the fear of not getting it right stops you from even starting. This is called perfectionism paralysis, and it's so common for people who've experienced narcissistic abuse. When someone constantly criticizes you or makes you feel like nothing you do is ever good enough, it can leave you with this impossible standard for yourself. You might think, if I can't declutter perfectly, why bother at all? As Brené Brown writes in The Gifts of Imperfection, perfectionism is not about striving for excellence. It's about trying to earn approval. That clutter symbolizes the weight of all those self-doubts and fears of failure. What makes it even harder is that the clutter becomes a constant reminder of the task you're avoiding, which adds to your stress. But here's the thing. Decluttering doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be progress. Author James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, says, "The most effective way to progress is to focus on small improvements. Instead of tackling your entire house, start with one drawer or one shelf. Allow yourself to be messy, to make mistakes, and to let go of the idea that everything has to look like a Pinterest board. Each small win builds momentum, and over time, you'll realize that progress, not perfection, is what truly matters." Now let's continue to number 4, clutter as a protective barrier. Letting clutter pile up is like building a fortress, but instead of bricks and mortar, you're using stacks of old clothes, unopened mail, and random items. After experiencing narcissistic abuse, it's common to feel the need to shield yourself from more pain. Clutter can subconsciously become that barrier, a way to create a sense of safety and distance from the outside world. Psychologist Dr. Craig Malkin, in his book Rethinking Narcissism, explains that when you've been hurt by someone close to you, your brain's natural reaction is to protect itself. Sometimes that means putting up physical barriers to mirror the emotional walls you've already built. The tricky part is that while this clutter might feel like protection, it can also keep you stuck. The same things you use to isolate yourself can make it harder to move forward. It's like being trapped in a maze you've built yourself. But recognizing this pattern is powerful. Remember, you're allowed to protect yourself, but it's okay to let some light in too. You shouldn't miss number 5. Seeking control through clutter. When your life feels out of control, holding on to stuff can feel like the one thing you can control. After experiencing narcissistic abuse, where someone else dictated how you should think, feel, or act, clutter can become your way of reclaiming power. Even if it's just deciding to keep an old magazine or a broken mug, it's your choice, and that can feel oddly comforting. Psychologist Dr. Susan David, in her book Emotional Agility, explains, when people face situations that make them feel powerless, they often turn to small, manageable decisions to regain a sense of stability. Your clutter might seem chaotic, but to you, it represents a form of control you didn't have in your relationships. The challenge is that this need for control can backfire. As the piles grow, they can start to control you, adding stress instead of relief. It's like gripping onto a rope too tightly. Eventually, it starts to hurt. But here's the good news. You don't have to let go all at once. The goal isn't to lose control, but to shift it, to let go of what weighs you down and create space for things that truly matter. Little by little, you'll find that real control comes from within, not from the clutter around you. Are you still up for number 6? Confusion about ownership. When you've been with a narcissistic abuser, even simple things like knowing what's yours can feel confusing. Narcissists have a way of making you doubt your own decisions, including what you can keep, give away, or throw out. Maybe they criticized you for buying something, or guilt-tripped you for getting rid of things they once claimed were important. Over time, this constant second-guessing leaves you feeling unsure about your belongings. Psychotherapist Beverly Engel, in her book The Emotionally Abusive Relationship, explains, abusers blur boundaries to keep their victims feeling dependent and disempowered. It's no wonder you might hesitate to declutter. What if you accidentally get rid of something you're not supposed to? This uncertainty can make it hard to let go of anything, and that's how clutter builds up. But here's the truth. It's your stuff. You have the right to decide what stays and what goes. Reclaiming this sense of ownership can be a big step toward healing. Author Karen Kingston, in her book Clear Your Clutter with Feng Shui, suggests starting small. Focus on items that clearly belong to you and reflect the life you want to create. By sorting through your things, you're not just clearing space, you're breaking free from the control the narcissist tried to keep over you. Trust yourself. You don't need anyone else's permission to decide what feels right for you. Finally, we're down to number 7. Fear of future scarcity. After enduring narcissistic abuse, it's easy to fall into a mindset where you feel like you'll never have enough. Whether it's love, resources, or even material things. Narcissists are often manipulative. They make you believe that you have to keep holding on to things just to survive, especially when it comes to possessions. You might start hoarding things out of fear that if you get rid of them, you'll regret it later or be left with nothing. This fear of not having enough in the future is a coping mechanism that stems from the emotional deprivation you've experienced. Psychologist Dr. Bonnie Zucker, in the Anxiety Toolkit, explains, when your sense of security has been damaged, it's natural to cling to what you have, believing it will protect you. But here's the thing. Holding on to everything in fear of future scarcity can keep you stuck in the past, unable to move forward. The reality is, material things won't fill the emotional gaps left by the abuse. Letting go of the need to hoard doesn't mean you're letting go of security. It means you're creating space for the life and abundance you truly deserve. By slowly shifting your mindset from scarcity to trust, you start to break free from the grip that fears and clutter have had on your life. Author Gretchen Rubin, in Outer Order, Inner Calm, writes, when we clear our space, we clear our mind. Start by reclaiming small pockets of order. One shelf, one corner of a room. It's not about creating a picture-perfect home. It's about reminding yourself that you deserve peace and stability. Little by little, as you tidy up your surroundings, you might notice your mind feels a bit calmer too. You're breaking free from the chaos the narcissist thrived on, and that's a powerful step forward.